Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the Revenue Optimists. It's a space where go-to-market leaders and revenue operations folks can really come together to try and learn from one another in order to grow their businesses. My name is Dave Nelson, and with me today, I'm very fortunate to be joined by Cheryl Leary, who's the Senior Director of Global Sales Operations at Dynatrace. Thanks very much for joining us, Cheryl.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I have been in the sales operations space for most of my career. After a little stint in IT, I spent most of my time at a much larger company at HP, all around the sales operations space with customer master data and CRM solutions, et cetera, CPQ, kind of all of that soup to nuts in there. And then just under 2 years ago, I decided to go to a much smaller company from where I came, although it's bigger to some, and I moved over to Dynatrace. And that's when I came into leading out an organization that I had been kind of a part of, and I could be a bigger fish in a smaller pond and really make a bigger change here. So
I believe it. That's great. And you're right. Dynatrace is still a pretty big company to some. On that note, can you tell us a little bit more about Dynatrace, what they do and what their focus is?
Sure. Dynatrace is actually a really exciting company. We're the market leader in observability and application performance management. Essentially, the role of Dynatrace, when you bring it into your company, is to be like a set of IT engineers who are constantly understanding what issues might be happening in your network and any of your systems, or what vulnerabilities. We also do security vulnerabilities might be there. And essentially, we have this great AI behind the scenes that will identify all of those risks, present them for you, and in some cases even solve them. So we can really make sure that we find the issues before your customers see them.
Fantastic. That's great. And who do you typically sell to? What are the types of businesses, sizes, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so we some of our competitors might work in a little bit of a smaller space, but our product works the best when you can put our Davis AI engine in there and then run everything around it. So we do tend to work with the larger companies. We will work with companies that it needs to be on all the time. So whether that be financial services, healthcare, anything with a heavy technology base where people are using applications, or they're going to walk away if we can't log in and get what they need to get done.
Mission critical.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Maybe let's just start at the beginning. So in your mind, what is a customer mastering program?
So customer mastering is one of the hardest things I think that any company can do right. And I'm not even sure there's a prescriptive answer to get it perfectly right, because it is such a moving target. Every business is unique and the world is constantly changing. So for me, I would say a customer mastering is within the construct of the size of your company and how your company is run, right? Whether if you're a SaaS company, you're going to run differently than if you're a hardware company. If you're going to, if you're in healthcare, your customers will all be different. So, and based on if you're a huge company and can have an MDM solution that houses all of your, all your customer account information, or you're a small company that's throwing it into a spreadsheet or a basic CRM tool, it can look different. But essentially, holistically, when you're looking at customer mastering, you want to think about who is your customer at each point in the cycle. So who is your customer at the very beginning? When you're marketing to them, you tend to market to industries, or you tend to market to geographical regions, or to a particular company, but globally, or things like that. So you've got that kind of big picture of what a company might be, our customer. Then you start to sell to them. Now you're talking to individuals. That's your buying person. That's the person that's making the decision. That's the person that's feeling the pain that you're trying to solve for, right? Then you start talking about from a financial perspective, where are you billing, right? You've got you've got a physical location that you're billing to, you've got a place. That sits there. Now, if you're software, if you're a hardware company, or a physical device, you need to ship it to them. So what is the location where they're going to be using that? Or conversely, in a SaaS company, you're giving them software. That software needs to sit on servers or mainframes. And by the way, that can be across the world. And you could have a person across the world who's making a buying decision, and it can be a complex company where maybe there's different divisions and one, they have a central IT buying group or, different subsidiaries. So although customer mastering seems like it should be straightforward and it should be, here's the list of all the publicly traded companies and private companies we have out there, the reality is that to each person you're talking to, their idea of a customer is different and their need of a customer is different within the buying cycle and the support cycle. Now you've got your support teams who are answering questions, and they need to know the people who are using that product that might be sitting on a server that's installed, across the world from them. So understanding it and keeping up with it and keeping up with the change, because companies are constantly moving, merging, divesting, all of that, going out of business, going into business. It's constantly changing.
No kidding. Absolutely. They call it decay, I think, of your data. Once you have it correct, it only lasts so long before it's out of date.
Exactly.
Okay. So obviously a big program, very important. How do you tackle it? Like what's a plan to at least approach the conversation at a business if they haven't done it already?
Yep. So again, I think it goes back to the pain points, right? Like I said at the beginning, we were saying when you join an organization and you're looking at even if you're not joining and you're just looking at your organization holistically, you're saying, what are the pain points behind it? If something is working well and you're not majorly scaling, like probably not a focal point, but you'll start to see where those silos hit. You'll start to see where this information from this department does not transfer over here. You'll start to see where the customer complaints are. You'll start to see, right? So to me, one way is to bring collaboratively people together, right? From the different departments. A lot of people will say, well, I am sales operations and the account data sits in my CRM tool, and therefore I am the owner of it and we're done and my team owns it. However, that is the hub that the spokes all come off of. And you need to understand those spokes to see where there might be failure points, because you can have the best data in the world for your understanding of it, but if it's not translating to the others, if people are calling and they're not getting support for their product because they don't understand that they're the same customer who purchased over here because they're in a different country or in a different division, that's a pain point. So kind of size it, kind of stress test it. Do you have a good governance process? Are you constantly monitoring and keeping up to date, or are you being reactive when people are complaining? 2, stress test, looking at things end to end. Do you understand a customer the same way I do? Do we have the same information? And where those failure points happen is where you need to focus your efforts.
And when you say when you have the same data as I do, who is the you on that end? Like who is it that might have different data?
So again, it's usually more on the business operations side. So you might be talking to a customer success manager, or you might be talking to a legal person, or you might be talking to, a person who's trying to invoice out of the customer, right? So it's really the operations as you're looking at the life cycle of that customer, and you'll find, and also it's helpful to say, are you being effective? Are you effectively reaching out? These are ways that not only can you find issues and fix them, but find things to do better. Are you looking at your customer holistically? Are you driving? Do you understand them? Because when they come to you for support or they come to you for a purchase, if you don't know what's going on, let's use this example. Hi, I know he sold you, $500,000. By the way, I really want to upsell you over here. And they say, well, wait a minute, I've had an open support ticket with you for 2 months, right? That's information you're going to want to have so that you don't start the conversation that way. So those are the types of breakdowns that are very common. And so putting that holistically together, it's never perfect. It'll never be finished, but it's a fun process to go through.
Nice. Now I imagine, because you talked about different stages of that journey, right, from prospect to paid customer with a support case, that's probably coming into different systems. You probably have like marketing automation, CRM, maybe a support ticketing system, and maybe it's all one. But how do you recommend to be feeding data in from all of these, but also considering those different stages to really help drive that hub that you talked about?
Yeah. So I always go off of the concept of sold to, ship to, bill to, payer, kind of that ERP translation of a customer. So
okay.
for what I found to be the most effective is really to use your legal customer as your base. So depending on the enrichment tool you have or the identifier tool you have, let's just use DMB because it's very common, a very common one. If you have DMB sitting at the center, your legal entity is a company, right? That company is going to be where you're going to be doing your sales off of. That's your sold to. And then you need to have in each of those tools a very clear, not just linkage to that record for their needs. I'm going to bill it here, or I'm going to install it here, but that it's dynamic, so that if that changes, if that company gets acquired, if that department merges with another department and they want to have two contracts come together, when you change that information in your hub, right, of usually the CRM system or the MDM system, the spokes can understand and update the data. So now, okay, what does that look like from our billing entities or where we have it on the servers? And that's really hard to do, but having a unique identifier that's constantly monitored and maintained so that you're not siloing data or guessing on associations to data. And if there was a crystal ball answer on how to do it, I think we would all be impressed, but it's just a lot of work. It's just
Totally.
a lot of work.
Absolutely. I can only imagine. And so what do you recommend in terms of ownership? Because I can imagine the marketing team has their feed and their input. ERP, like you mentioned, that's a whole nother system that has, if you're doing hardware, or in your case, if that's software delivered at different locations, where do you house the data? How do you decide on that? And then how do you feed it back out into those spokes that you mentioned?
Yeah. The ideal answer to that question is an MDM solution, honestly. I mean, if you are, a $5 billion company plus, and you've got that, an MDM solution, that's really what it's meant for, is to be able to be that hub for the spokes. And so everything should be sourcing off of there. If you don't, then usually it's the CRM tool or something that's kind of hubbing out there. But having a team responsible as their primary goal for that end communications out to others. And so what I mean by that is a customer mastering team, is a data governance team. A lot of people will say, hey, we're gonna put some resources on here and we're just gonna get all that data in, or hey, we're gonna, every time that we reach out to somebody, that's fine. Everybody can create their own accounts in the tools, and then you have all of this duplication, and then you've always got this small team of people, and there'll be a few that could listen to this and go, oh my gosh, we know it's us, who are sitting there always trying to keep the plane flying and keep putting things together. So the more resources you put on that from the beginning, to not just make sure the data is there, but that the data integrations to each of the tools on both sides are there. So you want your master data folks, your data governance, the people that are making sure that that hub is clean, but you need corollary people who they talk to in each of the other organizations.
I was going to say that must be incredibly important, because I know lots of examples where there's a legal data provider that recognizes the 51% ownership, but then there's the boots on the ground sales team who are interacting with these companies every day, and they either may have a more recent insight into the business or a better picture into how that company transacts.
Yeah.
And then it's not necessarily according to the data provider. So how would you recommend kind of handling those types of situations?
Yeah, so I'd say you've got your rule with your exceptions. That's because if you don't have the flexibility for exceptions, but you don't want everything to be exceptions. So I'd say you start your data processing at a legal perspective, right? So a legal entity is for 80% of the time going to get you a clear understanding of who your customer is, how they're doing business, and how they work. And you're going to have your complex customers, or again, it might be, hey, we're fully bought on by this company, but we're working as a completely separate entity for 1 year, 5 years, in the financial sector, a decade, still working independently. So you want to set your rules in place to start everything with a baseline, and then say, here are the exceptions that we can make, and who are the people that can make those exceptions. So one of the pitfalls you might fall into is, oh, so-and-so rep says, oh no, this company works like this. And then now you start creating that based on there. So you want to have some sort of level of governance even behind, here's the times where we can make those, here's your justification, here's your reasoning, all of that, but still being open. But be careful, because the more you step away from a legal structure and the more you step into those sorts of nuances, the harder it is to maintain. So you're really exponentially putting stress on your process by doing that. So just make it smart, but don't make it a free-for-all, is maybe one way of doing that.
Gotcha. No, that's a great suggestion, because I can imagine you're right. A free-for-all causes all the same problems that we're used to in CRM if there's no governance and structure around it. So any particular tools you recommend using, or processes, or is it kind of you build it as you go, or anything that you'd recommend to any of the folks that may be listening?
Yeah, honestly, I think I don't have a tool recommendation per se. As I said, I feel like there's some standards that are out there, but there's not one magic bullet when it comes to this that's going to get you the understanding of your customer ecosystem behind it. I will say it's really about having your rules in place and then a good visualization in front of it. Actually, one of the reasons we bought Traction was because, it's great that Salesforce will put this together for you, but it wasn't hitting that next level. It wasn't consuming what is the business value behind this. So that's actually one of the reasons that we thought Traction was cool, because we can visualize it, we can share it, we can manipulate it, and we can make it something as simple as account hierarchies. We can really show them out in different ways. So I don't have a tool to get the data. I'd say you really need to figure out where you located. Are you mostly US company? Are you mostly in another country where certain data providers are better? But just getting that formal team and a data architecture map, right? There you go. Like, get the team, get the data architecture map, know what you're doing, set your policies, and fund for it, because you will get you'll get off your skis so quickly if you don't start with that.
Okay, I like it. Okay, so you've collected the team now, you've funded for it, you have the understanding of the account structure and whatnot. Where do you go from there? So now is it kind of locking down, changing page layouts and views so that some can edit and tweak and refine, and so they can kind of curate that master source, and then others are kind of the recipients?
Yep.
Or is it more around allowing people to make the changes and then cleaning up kind of after the fact?
Great question. I think people go all over the board with it. I've personally seen both ends of the extreme. Only two people in a company can do it, and they have to have full control. And I've seen, hey, everybody and their brother enters in 14 versions of, IBM, international business, right? I think that it depends also where you are as a company. I think a smaller company will tend to allow that more open nature, because your data is small and you need to get it in there. But before you hit a certain point, you need to stop that, right? Like, that can't get out of control. You want to start putting controls in place, or again, your data will be so robustly messed up that it'll take you 2 years to fix it. I think that a balanced approach is really a good way to do this. Having the team with the sets of criteria, but allowing people to work their business. One option for this that I find to be successful is sort of a account verification process. So people can go in and they can say, I need to get this deal out. I'm trying to work this. Here's I need to convert this lead into an opportunity and start working it. That's great. But there's a level of cadence behind the scenes so that people can execute what they need to, but you've still got that customer master team sitting behind it being like, ooh, you typed international business machines and we have IBM at that same address. So we're just going to go ahead and put that together for you, so that there's that level of cleanliness, because you do want to keep it clean. And, maybe not every single SDR in your company or every single employee in your company can go and create whatever they want. I think some training, it also depends on the level of experience and exposure. And if you can do like a search before create, or really getting a good process behind it so that people, and that's harder for external, right? Like internal, you can tell your sales teams, hey guys, don't just don't just type this in, right? Like search for it
Yeah.
these 3 different ways, fuzzy match, partners or other things like that. That does make it much more difficult because you can't control them as well. So probably more operational resources for cleanup.
I bet. Yeah. No, that's a great suggestion. Yeah, because it causes an integration with whatever system they're using and how they're feeding data. You probably haven't given them access to your whole CRM, so they can't search ahead of time. So they're not just cleaning out your CRM for all the companies that they should be going after.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, so you have the team, you've given roles and permissions and recommendations on best practice like search before create. And I'm guessing you've probably put some significant time and effort and probably money around this. How do you go about measuring the success of that? Because it's not an easy one, right? It's a little bit tougher to calculate, I'd imagine.
Yeah. That's always where I get stuck on these sorts of things because it's a lot easier to measure not success.
Yeah, fair.
On something like this, it's very easy to measure lack of success because if you see duplication, so I would say that if you are a leader coming in and trying to clean up an existing thing, you've got an easy job ahead of you because then you can say, hey, we ran our analytics and we have this much duplication and our sales teams, here's 16 customer complaints from last week alone where we had, you can find those issues and you can rectify those issues. I think if you're doing this from the beginning or kind of from when you're a very small company, it's hard to measure success in the sense that your success is that the business runs well as it's supposed to. So I think I'm going to struggle with that one if it's already clean to start with. But imagine you are a company, I would say, how many duplicate records did you remove from the system? How much efficiency does that drive? Again, this is where you can bring your champions in. Like we talked about that other program. Hey, a major pain point for champions is that when they go to their customer list, they see duplicates out there and it's hard for them to identify which one that they're working that opportunity with. So what is their natural feedback as you start to clean it up and they become more efficient and they become more effective? So I would say it's like a reduction in operational issues and an increase in efficiency time.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and it seems like if you were measuring things like account conflict or time that sales reps spent searching, that could be one. But often people don't have those types of metrics in place. And so it becomes tough. But no, that's great. Yeah. So even just measuring the reduced frustration is probably a good way to go. That's great. So any other recommendations you have for anyone else in terms of customer mastering?
I guess the only other thing I would say when it comes to customer mastering is understanding the why, the how, the who, that, right? Like it's really about don't do it in a vacuum. Because if you do it in a vacuum based on the data, if you take a data focus or a technical focus, you're a lot of times losing sight onto how your business goes to market and how that data is used. So bring people in, collaborate, understand the ecosystem and understand the business value behind what you're doing, and then make your choice points about where you want efficiencies versus, technical stability and all of that.